Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Krang.
All right, well, thanks for joining us for another edition of American Potential. Had a great trip here in McAllen, Texas. If you ever get a chance, come to McAllen. Very hospitable, friendly people, of course, but really impacting this community, this border crisis. And we obviously got to visit with the Border Patrol folks, which was great, got to view the wall. But we were able to go to the Hidalgo County Water Control and Improvement District number 3. And that was, to me, kind of the highlight of the trip, to kind of learn more about this. And as I left there, I thought to myself, if I were a rancher and I was so impacted by this, what would that all mean? I mean, the private property rights issues of this tragedy are enormous. And I'm joined right now by Othal Brand Jr., who is the president of the Hidalgo County Water Control and Improvement District number 3. Othal, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So thanks for hosting the group yesterday. That was awesome. Man, there's just so much to get to. I guess let me ask you first, how has this, your father was the mayor of McAllen, right?
For 20 years, yes.
20 years. So you've lived here your whole life?
Pretty much my whole life. Moved here when I was 2.
And you all were farmers, is that right?
Yes.
So tell me how you've seen this community change over that time.
Well, people hear from all over the place, yes, it's safe, no, it's not. And so I made a distinction with you all yesterday that there's no confusion about that. If you live inside a city where there is patrolling officers and someone within 5 minutes of you, you have more of a sense of safety than you do. It's those that live outside the city that have to rely on a sheriff's department that is undermanned, 45 minutes an hour or more before they can get to you. And then you're out in the country. And that is where the biggest danger has been to those ranchers, farmers that live. My growing up, you were safe pretty much anywhere. I mean, you had crime, but not to the level we see now. And we used to play on the river. We used to swim in the river. We used to camp out on the river. People had cabins. People had trailers. People swung off swings, some in the water, skied, boated. All that's gone. It's gone. Can't do any of that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those things are gone. So it's some of the numbers that I shared with y'all yesterday about, the number of illegals that are coming. I don't call them immigrants. They're illegals. I'm sorry. They're illegals. They've broken our law. We try to fix it when they get here and make them legal.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Is what we do.
Right.
Is what our government's doing. But it's the numbers that are impacting us. Half of the illegals coming across in the United States are coming across in the valley. Told Border Patrol the other day, 128,000 a month for the last 28 months.
Wow. And
half of those are coming here. That's 60,000. That's 2,000 a day. And so, the changes now versus then, you're much more on your guard, much more.
Right.
I mean, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends that lived out in the country, no longer, they've had to move into the city and buy a home because they can no longer live on their ranch or can live out on their farm. We used to have farm on our farms growing up. We used to have a little community with a church and a grocery store on the farm, on the river.
Right.
Those are all gone. You can't do that anymore. People who used to own farms and lived on their farms, they're not doing that anymore. They can't. They have moved into the cities where it's safer, where you have a police force. McAllen's got 47. Last time I checked, it's been several years ago. I know it's a little higher now, but say just around 50 patrolling officers per shift. That's what the county has. At the time I approached both of them, county had the same number. And McAllen was covering 45 square miles, and the county's covering 1,387 square miles.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, where there is no law, there's lawlessness. That's just an old saying. Well, it's very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. So one of the great misconceptions I think most people have is that the wall, the border wall, is literally on the border, right? And I mean, you laugh because you live down here, but most Americans really do believe that it's like literally right on, like there's Mexico, here's the United States. That's not the case. And maybe you can explain your facility and how the wall kind of is situated on the property there.
Well, and you're taxing my memory a little bit, but I think it's been 12 years or longer since the first wall was ever put up, which was put up in the valley.
Right.
I think it was under Bush. And they really didn't ask permission because, and you'll understand why. The Rio Grande River floods. I mean, I've lived through several floods and hurricanes in my lifetime here. And so the federal government came back in the 40s and put up a what they call a control levee to hold the river within its bounds from Brownsville across the whole valley, all the way up to the northern end of the valley.
Right.
And so the federal government had a lease or owned all that land. They had the right to put that levee there. Well, they just came in and says, we're going to build it on the levee. And so that's how they got started, because it was the easiest route to take.
Sure.
But that levee was not on the river.
Right.
It's inland.
Sure.
To any number of feet.
Right.
But ours is about, we had a levee going through the middle of our 45 acres. And so we were about maybe 800 feet off the river, maybe more.
Right.
And so when they came to us and at the water district says we want to put a wall up, well, of course, that's the first time any of us had ever considered that in our lives, and that's never been a consideration. And so there was some reservation, some hesitation. But I will tell you, they enticed us, because what the government did, which I thought was real, it served a great purpose as well. As they says, look, not only are we going to build the wall, but we're going to take it and we're going to raise it 4 to 6 feet for additional protection for the flood. Well, man, that was it. We were done. It says, go for it.
Sure.
For us, that was a bigger concern for us at the time than immigration was, although immigration was becoming a bigger issue. We just like to say we live in a gated community now.
Yes, you do.
We live in a gated community.
Right.
And so that's how, now they're into having to get into private land. Right. And through eminent domain, which has been more challenging for them.
So your facility, for the listeners, is at least partially, like the buildings and a lot of the facility is
below the wall.
Below the wall.
Between the river and the wall. Some people call it the DMZ zone, some call it the no man's land. It is what it is. I mean, a lot of people think when they go through the wall at our place, they're in Mexico.
Right.
And they're not.
Right. Right. So what struck me there yesterday was, one, the infrastructure that this entity, that your water district has put into place, right? Because you're great help, I think, to the Border Patrol. I'm sure they love you because you're helping them do their job. You put in a boat ramp, you put in a place for helicopter to land if they needed it, all at your expense.
All at the water district's expense.
Right. And so when we were there yesterday, I think there were 3 trailers, Border Patrol trailers there. You let them launch from that boat ramp. But I was also struck by some of the other things that you've had to do, and I guess I'll let you kind of describe those, the grate that you had to put in. So maybe start with that, and let's talk about some other things.
Well, we had a lot of what we call splashdowns. I don't have many of those anymore, but several years ago, they had what we call splashdowns. And where it was a cartel who was it's always drugs. It was never people. They'd load up a car on the U.S. side with drugs, go on to get on the road and get detected by law enforcement, and turn around and come back to the river, and they would come over our levee and 70, 80 miles an hour, and they would literally drive off the embankment as fast as they could to hit the middle of the water. And when they hit that water, a whole army of people would come out and swim to it, pull the drugs out and the people, and go back to Mexico.
Wow.
And then we call those splashdowns. So we had many of those. The last time EPA requires Border Patrol to clean those cars out of the river so often. The last time they came to our place, they pulled 5 cars out in front of our property in the water. And so what we decided, it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe for my men. And so we bought some old used Jersey barriers, like in the middle of the expressway.
Sure. And
we put them along the embankment to stop that traffic from coming through, which it did. It stopped that traffic. And we put up lights thinking that if you split up, crime doesn't occur. Well, it just helped them better to see at night when they were traveling.
Okay.
But we put up towers, we put up cameras, gave Border Patrol access to those cameras. They since have put in some of their own. We put in a water trough for their horses. At nighttime when we leave our warehouse or leave our shop in our area, we always leave the air compressor and the water on and leave it hoses outside for them to use for their cars or four-wheelers or horses, whatever. We've tried, when we started having all this traffic, what was threatening to my people, that having been shot at twice, realized later wasn't to hurt them, it was just to scare them off. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, it jeopardizes the safety of the workplace. And so we were trying to figure out ways to partner with Border Patrol, because when we checked into security guards, well, you're $25, $35 or more an hour, and it was an astronomical amount of money if you're going to have somebody there 24/7. And so we says, well, we need to partner with Border Patrol and see if we can do something that mutually benefits both of us. And so what we've tried to do is make it as user-friendly as we can. If they just show up for 15 or 20 minutes at a time, it shuts traffic down for an hour or so. Mm-hmm. So if they can come and just visit our place a couple times, well, great. Do we help them? Well, they don't have to go back to their station to do things? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We put in locker rooms and showers for them in our existing office down there, and gave them the combination that says, whenever you need it, use it.
Yeah.
Everything we could think of.
Right. So I'm fascinated by the fact that people would do this. So as I understand it, these are drugs that were brought over, police detected them or Border Patrol detected them, they started to run, and they knew that there's that place where they can haul
launch
off. And how high is this levee so that people understand what you're talking about? It sounds like they're just kind of driving into the river. No, they're not.
No, we're on the outside curve of the river, which is usually a cliff. Mm-hmm. And so we're about 20 to 25 feet off the water.
And they would literally just launch the car
as fast as they could,
and get out in the middle of the river, which is Mexico. Well, you get on the other side,
yeah,
right?
The boundary line's in the middle, right? So they could get over there.
And then people from Mexico are waiting for them, scurrying out and grabbing the drugs.
Yeah, they would call them on their mobile phones to tell them, hey, we've been detected. We're going to go down at Water District Number 3's property, get a bunch of guys out there, and here we go.
That's just incredible. And then the car would just float down or sink whatever.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. I can't believe that this is the country that we live in. Okay, and then you had a great put on to stop bodies from going into your pumps?
Since I've been there, we've had almost a dozen bodies. In fact, that's what led us to building the boat ramp, because we realized when there were bodies found in the river, Border Patrol had to literally pull them up the embankment. I said, well, don't you have a boat to put in? And they said, we don't have any place to launch. We do not have a place we can launch boats. Mm-hmm. Now, on 13 miles of the river, I said, this is a federal government.
Right.
I said, a boat in the water is, in my humble opinion, is the best option, because that's where they're the most vulnerable. It's not when they get to land, it's when they're in the water. That's when you catch them. Mm-hmm. That's the best place to catch them. And so we built the boat ramp. They started pulling, just the nature of where we are, there's bodies that show up in the river. But we had one get into our channel and undetected and cause us a bunch of grief with our pumps. So we ended up having to put a grill or a screen or whatever you want to call it in the channel coming off the river going to our pump station in order to keep that from happening.
That's amazing. And you said yesterday that none of those people drown?
None of them.
They were killed, shot?
They were stabbed, shot, or beheaded.
Wow. So that's the violence that is happening right now, right?
And absolutely. And you hope that all, it's maybe a bad thing to say, but you're hoping that all that occurred on the other side, and then just, it wasn't on our, and it wasn't here in the United States.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's still in your neighborhood.
Sure.
It's still in your neighborhood.
Yeah. The cartels either own the property or have access to the property on the other side. They
don't need access to the cartel. I mean, they don't need the ownership of anything. They literally will. They have a pretty much free carte blanche on the Mexican side.
There's trails we literally were looking at trails on the other side coming down to the water. How many people a day? It's a daily occurrence that people?
Yes. For this sector, Rio Grande sector, it's well over 1,000, 1,500 or more a day, as high as 2,000 a day.
How often do you have them on your property?
Daily.
Daily?
And most of them are non-confrontational.
Sure.
We've had a few that came across that were confrontational, and my people were very good. They just would stand down and be calm and until the situation passed. But yeah, daily.
Yeah, man, it's just for most Americans, they don't understand.
They do not comprehend, but understand that as this continues, it will come to their neighborhood.
Sure,
it will come to their neighborhood.
Sure,
they need to understand that. That's why we loved having the group that was there yesterday, just so people understand. We don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or Independent. We don't care. What we want to know, are you an American?
Right.
And is this good?
Right.
And is this good for us? No, it's not.
Right.
And that's all the emphasis of it.
Yeah. You also talked about how your staff are armed now, for the most part.
We've had them threatened. Like I say, they've been shot at over the years. And so I've told them, I say, guys, I'm your employer. I can make sure the forklift's certified and is safe and working and no one get hurt. And I make sure that all those things that OSHA would require, labor laws would require, we've done. But this one, I can't do anything with this one. Mm-hmm. So I said, if you feel like you're being personally threatened, physically threatened, you carry a gun.
Right.
You carry a gun. Now, after I told them that, a couple of days later, I started rethinking that, and I thought, called them back and I says, guys, since we are a government agency, we probably ought to be certified. So at the time, we had a concealed handgun carry in Texas, and so got them all certified. Had a family living down there. Had the wife and all the kids certified as well. So if they had to defend themselves, somebody came in the house, they'd be fine,
right?
Because they were living there on the farm. Which we've always had someone living on the farm. I said that wrong. The pump station. We've always had somebody, that pump station's 100 years old. It has always had someone living there or groups of people living there up until the last 15 years. I can't find anybody to live down there anymore because I even offered Border Patrol they have a bulletin board where they just post stuff.
Right.
And I said, in their station, I said, just put up there. There's free room, no rent, and see if one of your new officers would like to come stay. No takers.
No takers.
From Border Patrol.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're not going to get just the average citizen to show up.
Yeah, so I'm not going to get the average citizen.
Right.
That would be kind of a setup on my part, even if I told them it wasn't safe, and they said anyway, I said, nah. But no, I couldn't even get a Border Patrol agent to take up the offer.
Yeah, that's just amazing. How about the environment? We didn't really talk about this yesterday, but the environmental aspect of this must be huge too. I saw across the way just kind of trash. I saw a little bit over on your side. I mean, is that part of this too?
No, well, it's minimal. There's a lot of rafts.
Right.
You see a lot of those, and we collect them. Usually they've been Border Patrol catches them. They just destroy them, so they can't be reused. We've gotten free aluminum boats out of it. Down just deserted on our embankments.
Right.
But environmentally, other than the cars going being in the river and the rafts, it's the first time anybody had asked me that. I don't know that I could really say from an environmental standpoint what the impact would be other than
Right.
that.
Right.
Than that.
As I look at this, it's a really complex problem because, you do have to have, we were at Catholic Charities yesterday, and any parent looks at those kids and, it's just, they're kids, and it's hard to see that and not have concern for them. But the way I look at it as our government is creating this problem.
Absolutely.
Right. And
Absolutely.
so I was really struck by the fact that the government created the problem, but it's Catholic Charities, a private entity, right, a 501c3, that's actually dealing with the impacts of it, because the government's nowhere to be found when it comes to that. Your thoughts?
And all the Catholic Charities can do is give them an overnight spot and telephones to call to whoever it is they're going to be with in the side, and help them to the bus station where it is, or airport or whatever. All they really can do is facilitate their continued journey. Mm-hmm. They and feed them, if they feed them one meal maybe that evening, or a couple, 2 or 3 meals while they're there for a couple of days. And the city of McAllen turns their head to it because they don't meet city ordinances, mm-hmm. but they understand the problem as well.
Right.
And so they're willing to bend that, and I understand that. But really all they do is they facilitate the continued journey, mm-hmm. and give them an overnight or an intermediate stop once they come across and have nowhere to go.
Right. Right. How do we solve, what is the solution to this problem? Come on, Othal, you got it figured out. I know you have it more figured out than the current administration does. That's for sure.
I do. I can tell you that. I do. That wouldn't be hard to do for anybody though, right now.
No, it wouldn't.
Well, I remember, and toward the end of Obama's administration, right toward the end, I read an article where he had suggested, or his administration had suggested, that we set up safe havens in all these countries, or they can go to a safe haven in their country and work through the embassy, American embassy in that country. I can tell you that I thought that was a great start. That was better than where we were.
Sure.
And it would certainly cost us less as taxpayers to try to facilitate that, mm-hmm. than what we're doing right now.
Right. Right.
But I will tell you further now, as I was growing up, we used to go on mission trips all the time to Central America, Mexico. And the really, if you want to help these people, which by the way, we are not the saviors of the world. I can introduce you to them, but we're not. We are not a bottomless pit. If we continue on the path, we'll find that out. Mm-hmm. But we used to go and help them where they were. And I will tell you what, my family worked in Central America, Mexico for over half a century. And the impact that we could have on daily lives of people living in those countries for the amount of what it cost us was huge. Things that you and I would take for granted. Mm-hmm. That we could send clothes, and we could during hurricanes or floods, and we would send stuff down. Priceless to them, priceless. Helping them where they are. And I think to me, that's what what was the program that Kennedy started?
The Peace Corps?
Peace Corps.
Yeah.
That's exactly. That concept is well thought.
Yeah.
I mean, and going where they are, and because we are not, I tell people, I said, if someone came to my home and said, Mr. Brand, we have this child and he has no home, could you provide him a place to stay for a time being? Yes. Come on in. 2 weeks later, they come back and says, hey, we got 3 more kids. Could you take care of them too? Deep breath. Say, okay. Come back 4 weeks later and say, I got 7 more. No.
Right.
Americans are the most compassionate people I know of on the face of the earth. But there is a limit to our compassion. I had a bunch of people coming down, and I was showing them all the things that I showed you all yesterday, and carrying guns. And one of these people says, well, you don't sound very compassionate to me, Mr. Brand. I says, are you even a Christian? I said, yes, I'm a Christian. I said, but I want to tell you something. I said, Americans and Christians are the most compassionate people I know. But I want to tell you something else. I have a responsibility to these employees. I have a responsibility to the city of McAllen and to the water district. And that is to protect the facility and protect my men. And I want to tell you, there is no compassion in doing that.
Right.
You get me past the safety, I'll show you much more compassion.
Right.
But when you threaten what I am and what we're doing, I have no compassion.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what else isn't compassion. It's not compassion for a government to send the signal to the rest of the world that you can make a 1,000-mile journey that might take you 4, 5, 6 months to make through some of the most dangerous territory, young kids, women. There's no compassion at all in that. And they are coming because our government is sending that signal.
And putting them in danger.
More
danger than where they are.
Yes.
Especially when you have the cartel is the guy that opens the door for them.
Right. Yeah, right. The doorman.
There is no getting into this country unless you go through the cartel. They lock it up all the way across the state of Texas. If you want in, you're going to pay. And by the way, if they like your daughter, maybe there's something they might do there. Or if they like all the money you're carrying, well, there might be something they take that. I mean, You're really putting yourself at a much more risk, in my opinion, than what some of the risk may be from you're claiming to be trying to run away from.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of times they get up here and they find out it's no better because they're illegals and they get put in some of the worst situations that you and I could ever imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. How about the aspect, many of these folks are fleeing socialism. They're fleeing bad governments, right? They're fleeing.
Well, don't come here. We're just like the rest of the world now.
Well, I know. But isn't that part of it? Like, we should be extolling the virtues of capitalism, extolling the virtues of, private property and the private ownership of property, things like that. And it seems that is also driving this. If we were exporting capitalism, right, and we were extolling that and trying to help other countries become that.
We did that under Reagan. Reagan was real big on that.
Right.
Because when communism was a threat in Central America and Mexico,
right,
he put in what's called the CBI program, Caribbean Basin Initiative.
Yes. And
that's been several years ago. In fact, to my knowledge, it's still in effect. But he did. He says we need to take capitalism to those countries and help develop an industry and create jobs. We had a freeze here in, I think it was 1987. And we had like 5,000 acres of citrus here and wiped it all out. My father called us all together and says, guys, we're done in the valley. We're going somewhere where it don't freeze. And we picked Honduras to go to beat the weather. And it was amazing what the federal government will do. He says, look, we have arrangements with those countries. You'll pay in order to incentivize us to go. They said there's no duties coming in or going out of the country, either country, Honduras or the United States, either one. No taxes for the first 10 years. That was huge.
Yeah.
So we went down to Honduras and we cleared jungle and we planted 5,000 acres of citrus. And I will tell you, the people there, where there were no jobs, and we created jobs for hundreds of people. It was amazing. I tell people, I says, I love my home because people love me here. They do. It's why I'm still here.
You can tell that, yeah.
But I want to tell you, those people down there, they loved us too. They loved us just for what we did for them in their lives.
Capitalism.
Now, did they give us? Did they render a service to us? Absolutely. But we created a job that didn't exist there at all.
You improved their lives.
Absolutely. And we took the risk to do it.
Yeah.
Ask Dole or Chiquita about going out and developing in other parts of the world and what happens when they go in and confiscate the whole thing or take it over or whatever. There's always risk in those that want to develop.
Yeah.
And especially when it's from the free enterprise sector.
Yeah. Right.
So these people come up here looking for that. And I know that. And they say, well, we've got a lot of jobs that nobody wants. Well, that's true. No one's teaching anyone to be a tractor driver. They don't teach that in school.
Sure.
No one's teaching anybody to work in a processing plant. There's no educational system or institution teaching people to work in a packing shed or to work as a farm worker. There's not. So there is a certain amount of need for that. It's not at 2,000 a day. It's not over 1.5 million people a year. No.
Right.
No, it's not.
How has, I mean, you've been here a long time. How have the policies that different administrations have, how has that affected the flow? I mean, obviously you probably see this as new administrations and new policies come in, the flow of illegals will be higher or lower.
Oh, it dropped when it really got rolling with Obama. It came to a trickle when Trump was in office. But the minute Trump was gone and Biden was in, boom, it just ramped right back up, and it's been crazy ever since.
Because again, they're sending the signal, just come. And
let me tell you, you will not. I tell people all the time, you can put all the resources you want to control it. You'll never control it when people in the rest of the world understand you do not have the will to control it. You have a government who doesn't want to control it.
Right.
So I don't care how many helicopters, how many boats, how many miles of wall you put up. All those tools are worthless until the rest of the world understands we have a border and we have a will to protect it.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't have the resources to do it. The world knows we don't have the will. We don't have the desire. From administration, not from Americans.
Yeah.
The majority of Americans, especially down here.
Right. Border Patrol yesterday said they need infrastructure, personnel, and technology. Those are kind of the three pillars. And I thought, and they can't say this, I understand, but the political will, you got to have that too.
You don't have that, I don't care what your resources are.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I will tell you, this is an interesting story. We had one group come down, they want to go on a boat tour. Well, I found a group of some people that were willing to take them out on a boat on the river, which was not safe.
Sure.
And told them, he says, guys, now you're going at your own risk. I said, that's fine. Well, they ran into a group of 200 people crossing in multiple rafts. There was just lines of people on both sides. And while they were on the boat observing it, of course, the people saw them and said, hey, pick us up, pick us up. No. A boat pulled up. It was cartel. 5 men on a boat, pulled right up beside the boat that we had lined up and said, hey, we know you have a number for Border Patrol. Call them and tell them these people are very tired. They don't want to have to go up to the levee to get on the bus to bring the buses down here.
Wow.
And drove off.
It's amazing. They're playing us. The cartels are playing.
They're unimpeded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they know that we won't do anything.
Right.
Now, we will when it comes to drugs, but we can't do anything when this sector, 75% of the people in this sector are taking care of humanitarian help and not enforcing or protecting the border.
Right. Right.
You got all sorts of holes in the wall. It's like Swiss cheese.
Well, and you talked about this yesterday, but it seems like the cartels really are manipulating our policies. They know us. They're playing the game better than we are because the Border Patrol's hands are tied by policies, and there are no rules in the cartel. They just do what they want, right? No ethics, no moral. There's nothing that tells them you have to do it this way.
You know what their will is?
What's that?
Money.
Yeah.
And their will for money is much greater than ours to protect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. One other quick thing I wanted to talk to you about. You said yesterday you talked about the influx in the last year or so of Chinese nationals coming across. Your thoughts on that?
Went to the detention center probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, and one of the things that was brought up and we saw it because we were in the detention center where they bring all the illegals that are processed in this sector, or for most of the sector. 70% of them were Chinese. Now, what was interesting about it is it wasn't like all the other groups that come. All the other groups that come, they come single men, single women, mothers with children, mother and father with family and children. All the Chinese, the interesting observation was they were all single men and single women. No kids, no married couples. And all of them, I would say, in a range of late 20s to mid 30s. Now, if that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what will.
Right.
Does it Does it cause the imagination to flow? Absolutely, it does. Where does it go? Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah.
But it is an observation that ought to be well taken.
Well, and you would hope that a government whose main charge of the federal government is to defend the nation would look at that and say,
no, we know that's not so.
Yeah.
They're not out to defend us. We know that.
yeah,
People in the Valley know it. We see it every day. And I love groups that come down because, and particularly from other different states that they came from. These are all Midwestern, Northwestern states.
Yeah.
And they don't have that impact. I says, but you got to understand that this continues. It will come to you.
right,
It will come to you.
right,
And anyone who says there's not more crime where there's illegals, don't ever believe that. That's like them telling us the border's safe.
right. Yeah,
Absolutely not a word of truth to that.
yeah,
When people come across and they have no job, what do? Well, they either find friends or family, legal or illegal, to go stay with, or they do that, and then on top of that, they'll go and of course, now I understand we have some federal programs for them, but they used to just get on them fraudulently, and that's one option. Well, the third one is crime. I don't care what kind it is. But they've got to generate something if they can't work. Now, I understand they're changing that as well to allow them to work. Well, that's just one. I find that real amazing. But and we have people working in the Valley that have been waiting for years to legally enter the United States, and they're still waiting.
right. And those are the people we want, the people that respect the system enough to say, I can't go because I don't have a permission slip yet to go, right? They're not the lawbreakers.
Well, and I'll tell you, in tongue in cheek, a lot of us have said, well, what you need to do is swim across the river, swim back, and go get in a Border Patrol pickup, and you'll be legal in 72 hours.
Right. That's a broken system.
That is a very broken system.
Yeah.
Very broken system.
Last point. How does this impact the local governments here? Right. I mean, they're having to provide a lot of services that you wouldn't have if you didn't have this surge that's going on.
Well, they're looking at the federal government. I mean, I know our city has stepped up as much as anybody in the Valley and done a lot of things, but then turned right around, went to the government, and says, "Look, this is your problem, and we're handling it. You need to help us."
Yeah.
And they have.
Yeah.
They have. They've come through and helped the city several times, and Catholic Charities is now being helped. In case you're not aware of that, they've got federal funding now as well.
Which probably isn't good. It's not the way that it was intended.
No.
Right.
No. Like I say, from you took it strictly from a businessman's perspective, you need to be working on the other side of the river
Yeah.
and have a bigger impact in their lives than you're going to have here.
Yeah.
Because they're going to struggle here. In the Valley, last U.S. Census said 80% of the people in the homes in the Valley speak Spanish, primary language. But we know, and federal studies have said that anyone that comes to the United States, if you don't learn English, you'll be on the lower socioeconomic level of this country as long as you don't speak English.
Right.
And that impedes these people immensely.
Yeah.
Now, in South Texas, it doesn't because we speak Spanish everywhere.
Right.
Anywhere else in the rest of the country, it's going to be a challenge. And it's not fair. It's not right. It's not fair to these people.
Right. Well, Othal, thanks for all you do. Thanks for opening your facility. I think it's really neat that you do that. It lets people see what you're experiencing, and it's really kind of a window. I wish every American could see what I saw, and hopefully we put through this podcast and through some of the other media coverage that we had, people will see that and see and tell your story, because it's really a tragic one. From a property rights standpoint, there's so many tragedies here, and again, all created by bad government policies.
That's all.
Yeah.
We inflicted on ourselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for all that you do, and thanks for listening to the podcast. Appreciate you doing it. This was this has been an amazing trip, and it was great to have like over 60 people come down on this trip. and view this. If you ever get the chance, please do as well. Please come down and see this for yourself. It's amazing, and it's a real tragedy because government is the real root of the problem here. Bad government policies. So thanks for joining us on American Potential.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.